Welcome to Behind the Music. I'm Kristin, Holton, Prouty. Happy to be with you again as we begin this month of February. It's always so fun to sit here on the bench of the Mighty Bigelow at Victory and just get to share some ideas and some musical concepts with you. As you know, we've been in a sermon series that's titled Piercing the Darkness. We've been reading some of the stories of Jesus' ministry on earth, taking the way that his truth that he shared with everybody impacted those around him and really shed some light in the darkness of the world. The concept that came to mind as I was thinking about this darkness and light and happy and sad and these sort of things that are opposed to each other was major and minor. Major and minor. So when we listen to music, sometimes music makes us happy, sometimes music makes us sad, and one of the things that affects that mood is whether it's in major or minor. A couple weeks ago, if you watched, you learned about how different chords have different functions, and I gave each note of the scale a different number, 1 through 7. For example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, then we're back to 1. So those same numbers can be used now as we talk about major and minor. So a chord, a triad, we're going to think of it as a very basic 3 notes, and those fall on 1, 3, and 5 of the scale. For example, 1, and there's 5. We talked about those chords last time. And then the note in the middle is what determines whether it's major or minor. So for example, if I use this note, that's major, right? Now if I take the same note and I just lower it down just a half step, and I make a chord with that, suddenly the whole mood of the chord changes. We've gone from happy and bright, now we're a little sadder. Even though the registration hasn't changed, the tempo hasn't changed, there's just something a little bit dark about that. So if you have a song that's in minor and then suddenly it goes to major, it's like piercing the darkness. We have this whole new world that opens up for us. The piece that I decided to share with you this week is a piece that was composed by the American organist, David N. Johnson. He was born in Texas, had a very busy life, and then ultimately came to be organ professor at Arizona State University here in Tempe. He lived there for the rest of his life. And I'm fortunate to have some friends that were actually students of his. The piece that I'm going to play today is a trumpet tune in D. It was composed in 1962. And it was used pretty widely. It was a pretty popular piece. Richard Nixon's daughter had it at her wedding. Somebody used it as their theme song for a radio show. So it got a lot of use back in the 60s and the 70s. And some of his music, we're starting to revive it now. It's a really fun piece. But it's called in D. It doesn't say in D major, in D minor, just a trumpet tune in D. So we know our chord is going to start on D. But let's see if we can play it and figure out if it's D major or D minor. There's our chord. Definitely D major, right? As we talked about, when this middle third is high, it's major. When it's lowered, it's minor. So it starts out in D major. And so on. Happy D major, floating along. And then we get to the middle section, which we'll call, in our musical term, of B. We've had the A section, which was D major. Now he moves to the B section, and he decides this trumpet tune in D, but I'm going to switch it up. I'm going to make it D minor. See if you can hear the difference. Here we go. That. We don't have this bright happy, it's a little darker. So our B section is in D minor. We've had D major, now we have D minor. And then listen, I'm going to play for you At the end of the B section, where we're still in minor, and then when it goes back to the A and we're back in the happy D major, you can feel that contrast of mood. The tempo hasn't really changed, the registration has changed, but it's still a happy, light, trumpety kind of thing. But just the fact that it's minor makes it a little different. Here we go. Are you ready? So there's our major again, that middle note. So if you have a keyboard or something at home, just go and play around with that. You can do it in any key. C major, if you want to hear C major, do your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then play 1, 3, and 5 together. And then take 3 and lower it. And now you're in minor. Ooh, and now you can play spooky music or sad music or dark music. Not to say that minor is bad. Minor speaks to my heart, especially when we're in season of Lent and things like that. It definitely has a place. Music has a very strong connection with our emotions, and that's just one of the ways, one of the means that we have is the use of major and minor. So this week, as we continue in our series of Piercing the Darkness, I hope you enjoy this piece by David N. Johnson, and I look forward to being with you again next week.